Hi and welcome to my channel Old School Hunter. Today I want to talk about the Halloween pumpkins, but not really these ones. I want to talk about this one here. This pumpkin is made of styrofoam and I want to show you how I built this. And because it's made of styrofoam, you can use it as all your decoration if you want. If you like the video, give me a thumb up, hit subscribe to stay in touch with my channel. And now I'm thrilled to show you how I built this guy. The whole project starts with styrofoam, of course. At the end, my pumpkin has a diameter of approximately 30 cm and a height of 25 cm. Therefore, I first cut the styrofoam sheets to 33 by 33 cm. Then the individual panels are glued together by using expanding foam. Alternatively, styrofoam glue can also be used here. In the end, I weighed down the pile of wood so that the expanding foam wouldn't push the sheets apart so much. After the expanding foam has hardened, you can continue. Now guidelines are drawn on the edges at 7 cm in order to have an orientation when cutting. First, the rough shape is cut out along the guidelines. A styrofoam cutter like a hot wire is definitely an advantage here. For the next step, I'll use a dog brush. This is coarse and therefore very suitable for removing a lot of material. With this, I worked my way through to the finished shape of the pumpkin. After processing with the dog brush, the pumpkin now has its shape. Now come the deepings. To have them run straight, the pumpkin is divided into 8 parts with the help of a rope. The lines are then transferred to the pumpkin with a black pen along the rope. Then the rope is removed again. I then drew in intermediate lines again, so the pumpkin ends up in having 16 lines. To work out the deepings along the lines, I use a coarse half-round file. Alternatively, a narrow wire brush can also be used. In a second step, I then whitened the deepings with the round side of the file. In the end, the deepings are about 1 cm deep and 2 cm wide. Since the styrofoam is very roughened from the treatment, sandpaper with 120 grit is used now. This smooths the surface and the edges of the deepings are also rounded off. The stem is made of high density foam. This is more stable compared to styrofoam. I start with a block with the dimensions of 6 by 6 by 10 cm. Again, the dog brush is used to round off the stem. The sandpaper with 120 grit is used again to smooth the stem. After that, the deepings are routed and the edges are again smoothed with the sandpaper. To attach the stem to the pumpkin, first drill a hole in the stem and the pumpkin. Then the hole in the pumpkin and the stem is filled with expanding foam. Wooden slats are inserted into the holes to give the connection more support. Until the foam hardens, the stem is also fixed with wooden slats. After the foam has dried, the transition from the pumpkin to the stem is worked out. Again, I use a file for the rough work and then a router to create the deepings. To make the hard shell, the first step is to cover the pumpkin with a layer of plaster. I use model plaster, which is solid after 10 minutes. Because of the shape, a spatula is not so good for applying the plaster. The easiest thing to do here is to put on some gloves and apply the plaster directly with your hands. An alternative to plaster would be epoxy resin. This is certainly more robust, but also many times more expensive. After the plaster has hardened, the pumpkin is lightly sanded with 120 grit sandpaper. This is especially important in places where lumps may have appeared. I do not sand the pumpkin smooth because I want to have a little texture. Plaster has the disadvantage that it absorbs moisture from the air and is therefore not really suitable for outdoor use. For this reason, a second layer of putty is now applied, which can be used outside. It is best to mix the putty to a viscous consistency, so that it can be applied with a brush. This will give a very good result. In this step you should work as accurately as possible, because the putty is very difficult to sand smooth. However, if the pumpkin only finds its place indoors, you can use plaster in this step again. After drying, the pumpkin gets another light sanding with 180 grit sandpaper. Only the loose grains of the layer are removed now. Since a grey pumpkin doesn't look very appealing, I use a rich orange to paint the pumpkin. The paint used is suitable for indoor and outdoor use. Here you can certainly vary the color and paint the pumpkin, for example, using a yellowish orange hue. This painting is done a total of 2 times. Now only the color on the stem is missing. At this point I started with a brown tone and apply this lightly. There's always very little color on the brush because the brown color should not be opaque. Then I use a moss green, which is also applied in thin layers with little color. Here it is good if the brown color is not yet completely dry. Then the colors mix easily and you get a good effect. Finally, the base of the stem on the pumpkin is repainted in black. Again, work with little color. Depending on personal taste, a hard edge can also be drawn here at the base between the stem and the pumpkin. Since I want to set up my pumpkin outside, a layer of clear coat mud is applied at the end. Always remember to wear a suitable mask here. Okay, that's all about building this pumpkin here. I hope I could show you enough steps so you can build this pumpkin on your own. Until Halloween I have to build more of these guys, because I need them as decoration of course. So in the meantime, feel free to watch the other videos on my channel, and until next time, stay healthy.